Clocking in at just over 51 hours, I finally have beaten God of War Ragnarok. And my question is this going to be the future of Sony first-party titles? Are we going to start to see these games that are epic, sweeping, massive tales filled with lots of open world areas to explore and feeling rewarded for doing things and meeting a diverse cast of characters and really getting to learn about their motivations? I like to use the term NPCs that matter. Are we going to start to see that more in Sony games? I personally hope so. I would bet that God of War Ragnarok's playtime may be divisive to some because of the sheer amount of commitment that is required. This is definitely not a podcast game. This isn't a game where you watch this while listening to your favorite song or podcast or watching something on the other screen. This is a game that is full of rich dialogue, rich storytelling, really vibrant, and in many ways complex worlds to explore and to kind of almost Metroidvania-like work your way through time and time again as branching pathways and areas become made available. This is a game that tells a very sweeping narrative tale of a father and his son and the last wishes of their mother. And you really see Kratos in a very different light by the end of this game than I even where I expected him to go. And I love that. I love that they could take such a beloved character and such a really interesting story and inject so many additional complex layers and characters and themes on top of it. And they've done such a good job with it. And that's why I cannot recommend this game enough. It's an absolute masterclass. I don't really do ratings, but it's easily one of the best games I have ever played. It is so gorgeous. It is so fascinating. There is so much wealth of content. As I mentioned, I'm 51 hours in. I still haven't gotten to platinum yet. There's still more to do. As a matter of fact, after you beat the game, there's more to do. And you don't get the credit roll until after a couple more missions, after the main mission is supposedly completed. Then you find out there's even additional things to do with more pieces of gear and more challenges and more leveling up if you want to be the best of the best of the best. And maybe for some people, they say that's too much, but it rewarded me personally, and I know my wife would agree because she played it entirely with me. We played it together. I mean, she just watched, but we were just absolutely glued to the television, wondering, like, what's going to happen next? And when you start meeting the characters and you think, oh, it's just kind of like an NPC that's going to give you, hey, go get me 5 wolf pelts, right? The traditional World of Warcraft mission, right? Go do something simple for me and then come back and I'll give you a reward. But then you start talking to that character and then they start accompanying you on your journey. And you see them again later in scenes that don't involve Kratos. And you're getting to learn about their life. And you're getting to learn about their family and their values and their hopes and their dreams. Yes, not every character arc is as sweeping as Kratos or Atreus's was. But there are a lot of characters in here that are surprisingly very well fleshed out. It's very clear to me that Sony Santa Monica spent a lot of time writing this game and injecting so much life into each character. I think it's better for that. If you want to golden path this game, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I really do. The main story holds up just perfectly fine on its own. The idea of what Ragnarok is and the idea of what Kratos and Atreus are kind of set out to do makes perfect sense if you just decide to go from main story beat to main story beat. But if you take your time to go off and see some of the ancillary things and explore some of the most massive side quests I've ever seen in a game, there are some areas in the game, there's especially towards the end of the game, there's some of these open world areas that took us almost 8 hours to beat. Totally optional. But if you do those things, you'll learn more. You'll learn more about the world and the characters, and you'll learn more about why things are the way they are, and it'll give you a better sense of appreciation for those main story beats. And I love that. One of the things that I was really frustrated about with the last couple iterations of Assassin's Creed was I felt there was just a lot of filler material that really didn't mean much of anything. Here, I feel like there is just as much, if not more, content than other Assassin's Creed games, but it matters. And when you're walking through after major story missions and you're talking to all of these characters that you have collected along the way, and you're hearing about what they thought about what just happened and how it may impact them personally or give them pause or lead off into yet another mission with them, it's very satisfying. The side quest absolutely matters, and that's why I say to me, you absolutely have to do yourself a favor and don't rush through this game. It's not going anywhere. I know it's coming down the pipe for Sony first-party games. It's going to be quiet for a while. I think we all can agree on that. So take your time and don't rush through this. You're doing yourself a huge disservice. I think when I look at like the breaking down of this game, when I look at individual things like the graphics or the world design or the RPG element where you're selecting pieces of gear, they're all done very, very well. But not any one of them I feel like excels in a way that blew my mind. It's definitely a cumbersome RPG system. There's a lot of statistics and metrics that don't really make a whole lot of sense. And what you're mostly going to do is find a perk by equipping pieces of gear that unlocks a set bonus. That is going to be the kind of gear and the choices you make as to what you use, as opposed to, oh, belt A has 4 strength but 10 defense, but belt B has 10 strength and 4 defense, right? And you have these trade spaces. Those numbers are going to largely mean nothing to you. You're probably not even going to even notice it unless you're on the extreme of health or on the extreme of like strength, for example. The in-between stuff doesn't really matter. And I wondered why Sony Santa Monica would continue to invest in the system other than putting in an artificial kind of placeholder like, hey, you can't go to this area yet because those are level 5 enemies and you're only level 2. I think they could have done a better job of just removing all those numbers and just gating where you go through story beats, such that when you got into an area, it was manageable because you were there. I feel like that was definitely a miss in the game. And I don't really feel like we invested a lot of time in the numbers, other than we early on agreed, my wife and I, we were going to max out strength at any cost. And that's pretty much our North Star through the entire game. Was it the right choice? I don't know. We obviously beat it. We've done most of the optional stuff now with ease. When we defeated some of the final bosses, it was jokingly easy that we were like chunking off enemies' health bars like almost an eighth per combo. Okay, so that worked for us, but I know there are other builds and you can get creative and perks and procs and, hitting with one weapon and switching to another weapon and then switching back to the first weapon or whatever. Absolutely, you could do that, but I don't think you need to. I think you could just play and have fun, and I think the game holds up on its own. But that is a frustration. Another piece that I wasn't particularly thrilled about was the map design. This game is insanely dense in a very, very, very complex way, and the map just does not do justice for the amount of walkways and secret pathways and jumping down from cliffs and all these sort of things that you need to do to progress through a level. If you want to be a completionist, even if you don't, just like, where's the North Star? Where am I supposed to go next? The game is it trips over itself a little bit because the map is so useless. It's more of like a cartoon map than a functional map. And I'm not expecting like Division 2, like orange line, handhold me right to the objective. Skyrim, the objective is right here. But it was very difficult to navigate, especially in some of the more complex areas. Svartalheim is a perfect example of this as you're navigating through the town area on the east side of the map. There are places that you have to kind of go through like an indoor or go underneath a tunnel that doesn't make logical sense. And your ultimate goal might be to head north, but you have to head south because the tunnel loops around and then eventually goes north. But you wouldn't know that. And as you start to see how dense the side stuff is to do and going off on treasure hunts or side missions, it's easy to get lost and easy to get frustrated. The map doesn't do a good enough job. That's something that absolutely was a frustration in the first game, but due to the sheer amount of density in the second game makes it even worse. So those are the two areas that I would clean up for the next installment of God of War. There has to be another one of these. It was such a masterclass game. It was done so well. I want to see where Kratos and Atreus go to next. I'm not going to get into any story spoilers or anything like that. because a lot of people haven't beat this game. And it's interesting to me to see, just based on the achievement hunter sites, how low people are in the percentage of completing it. Either they are somebody like me who took a really, really long time, or maybe they burnt out. I am not really sure. The game sold insanely well, but it seems like a lot of people still haven't gotten to that finish line yet. So I'm going to save any spoiler stuff. I don't even think I'm going to do a separate story or a video on the story spoilers. So many other ones out there that do a better job than I did. I will say that everything felt deserved and everything felt just. And to see the growth of Kratos in particular through this adventure, when you look at how gruff and hardened he was in the original God of War. I'm not talking about I say the reboot, the one that came out maybe like 5 years ago. I'm not talking about like the original PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2 one or anything. I'm talking about the remastered or whatever, right? To see him in that couple hours of that game the first time, even in the trailers, even like the E3, like 2015, 2016, when you're watching some of those trailers, getting a sense of who he was versus who he has become, and how much Atreus's ways have changed him, and how much Kratos maybe even spares enemies instead of killing them outright, really took me back. And I love that character progression. And that's, I think, something you could only do in video games. It's only an avenue or venue that can be reached in video games where you really become that character and you feel that sense of anger and hatred towards something, but then you realize that you've kind of lost yourself to that anger and hatred. And how do you step back from that? And I think the game did a phenomenal job with that. For the next game, obviously, as I mentioned, the map and the RPG system, I think absolutely needs some work, but change nothing else. This game is an absolute masterclass. I hope that more PlayStation games take like a story beats from this, even like in games like Days Gone that were very, very long. I really fell off Horizon for a lot of different reasons, but I really hope to see these long narrative sweeping tales that are rewarding. That's the key. That's why Horizon falls off of that are rewarding in the future. And I'm excited to see what happens for the next generations of Sony games. Clearly this one deserved all the accolades and praise that it got. And I still have more to play. I'm probably going to be somewhere around 65 to 70 hours by the time I put this down, which is insane value for games considering my beloved Modern Warfare campaign was like, 5 hours? So this is absolutely the ultimate way to do something. And I couldn't say just how phenomenal it was, but phenomenal, great, loved it. Go check it out, God of War Ragnarok. Those are my thoughts on the game. I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. Let me know what you think. That'll wrap up today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.